Everybody. This is my very first time presenting at EFLtalks, and it's a great honor to be here. And I'd like to thank everybody for giving me this chance to be here and present to you. So I'm going to talk about a very interesting topic, which has become my passion lately. It's an alternative way of teaching learners, and I'd like to say that it's very interesting for everybody to be in such a classroom environment. So I'd like to call these lessons Escape the Classroom lessons. And the reason is because when you get inside the classroom, you set different challenges for your learners, and they need to identify all these challenges and overcome these challenges in order to be able to set free themselves. So why decide to choose this kind of lessons? And I think, okay, there you are. So from a personal experience, I have witnessed the classroom to transform into a puzzle-based environment. Learners that do not respond well in traditional classes start to shine. They do not flick their eyes to the classroom because they want to get out, because they are bored, but because they wish they had more time to be able to solve all the challenges that you have set for them. And they become active participants with a vested interest in winning. We're not talking about lessons anymore, we are talking about an adventure. And the great thing about teachers is that they get to witness social interaction, lateral thinking, engagement, and immersion at the very same time. How cool is that for everybody? And there is just a simple thing when it comes to those lessons. You just need to find a basic and a very simple loop when you want to design this kind of lessons. So there are always challenges, some solutions, and some rewards. The challenges derive from the locks that you set in boxes. So you go into your classroom, you scatter around the classroom some boxes, 1, 2, or 3, whatever you like. You attach some locks on them. They can either be word locks, 3-digit locks, 4-digit locks, directional locks, whatever you desire. And then you design your teaching materials based on these locks. So your students have to go around the classroom, identify hidden messages, clues, and stuff like this, and try to correlate and link the clues back to the locks. And each time they do that, they get a reward that can either be another clue in order to overcome another challenge, or it could be some kind of paraphernalia, which can be a UV flashlight or a decoder in order to decipher a word clue. And if so far I have ignited your interest in this kind of lessons, then you might probably want to train your learners to become escape the classroom players. And you can do that by developing this kind of skills. When you allow your learners to enter your classroom, they need to develop the ability to search and see what is relevant to their task and what is not. So they need to search the room, root and branch, and find different hidden clues. After that, they need to be able to understand that the materials that they are obtaining from around the classroom, they're relevant to their tasks and their adventure. They need to be able to understand that the clue that they get links back to a certain lock. And after that, they need the ability to correlate, to relate that clue that they get to the puzzle that they have faced inside the classroom. Another thing that they will need is pattern recognition. Here, inductive reasoning is very, very basic, because they need to understand that there are sequences of numbers, letters, words, etc., that they need to identify, think about it, cooperate together, and think of the answer. And finally, they may encounter some anagrams or cryptograms around the classroom, so they need to decipher those word clues. So you can train them by providing such tasks to them prior to the adventure. And moving on to how you set up this kind of lesson. There's a simple game overview. So if you've got a large scale classroom, you need to set your learners into groups of 6 to 8 students. And if you've got a smaller scale class, then getting them into pairs seems to be working fine. Right after that, you need to inform them whether you want to challenge their cognitive capacity or their physical capacity if you're teaching PE lessons, or both. It's just up to you if you want to cater for kinesthetic learners and visual and audio learners, audiovisual learners. Now, another thing that you have to do, because you don't want your learners to jump in at the deep end, is that you need to inform them about their challenges. So how many locks do they have to unlock? And finally, you need to set a specific amount of time, because you want them to work under pressure. You don't want to give them so much space, so much freedom, because that would take away the fun. Another thing that you need to do before set the scene and the context is to come up with a very nice and intriguing title. So I'm going to present to you today my lesson, one of my lessons, Escape the Classroom lessons, which is called The Universal Genius. Has anyone got an idea of who this person is? Can you type it into the chat box really quickly? No response. Plato, Stephen Hawking, okay. Actually, yes, good, Leah. Da Vinci, this is Leonardo da Vinci. And he is considered by most people the universal genius. He knew lots of stuff. So when you've got this kind of title, you get to activate your learner's schematic knowledge and assess their previous knowledge. So always think of that. When you try to create an Escape the Classroom lesson, think of your title. It has to be intriguing, and it has to ignite that spark to your learners to start thinking about the topic. And then you move on. So here's what I did with my learners. I set 2 lock boxes around the classroom. The first one had an inscription, ideal proportions, and a 3-digit lock attached to it. The other one, the smaller one, had a hasp with a 4-digit lock, a color lock, and a word lock. And the only thing that my students were provided with were a brochure with the life and works of Leonardo da Vinci, and some laminated posters and quotes. The one with the lady with an ermine, and the other one with Mona Lisa, and some quotes written by Da Vinci. So when my learners got their eyes to the first box, they saw that message, ideal proportions. So they had to go back to recourse to the brochure and find out by scanning the brochure the word ideal proportions. So they had to link those 2 elements. And what popped up was the word, the Vitruvian Man, the work from Leonardo da Vinci. So somewhere over there, there was a reference number in which that number leads to the way that they have kept this, the Vitruvian Man at the Cabinetto at Accademia in Italy. So they had to use this code to unlock the lock, and they just got, so they were granted a UV flashlight, and they were able to reveal the secret messages for my patron and in the Louvre size matters. So that led them again back to the brochure, and they had to identify all these by scanning and reading for specific information to identify the words and the different kind of passwords. And the quotes had some colored letters, so they had to do an anagram and come up with the word artist. And finally, they were able to unlock all the locks, and get themselves access to some very nice and juicy chocolates. So finally, right after that, you need to get your learners back to reality. They were having a great experience, so you need to get them back, and you can do that by offering them a debrief stage. The debrief stage enables learners to think about the experience, to talk about it, to say what was difficult, what was interesting, how well they communicated and stuff like this. So reflection is an integral part of learning. So you have to allow your learners to do that. And finally, I know, so I'm moving on, I'm skipping. So the last slide, please scan the QR code. You can download for free my full edition of the lesson, The Universal Genius of the Breakout EDU platform. And I know that I can compensate for all this input that I got you through today if you decide to join me at the TESOL Greece convention on March 3rd and 4th, I think. So if you do want, come and join me. Thank you so much.